Hello everybody, today I'll be showing you how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide complex numbers. Now, to add and subtract and multiply and divide complex numbers, you first need to understand what a complex number is. A complex number is any number with the form of a plus b I, where a and b can be any number. Some examples are 3 plus 2i, or 4 plus 6i. Now, it doesn't have to be just a plus. You could also do something like 5 minus 4i, or 5 times 4i, or 5 divided by 4i. But what is this mysterious I, you may ask? I is equal to the square root of -1. Now, technically, the square root of -1 should not exist. There cannot be a square root, a negative number inside of a square root. But mathematicians invented this to make it easier when going on mathematical equations. So, first, let's start with adding. No, let's do this. Yeah. So, if I have negative or square root of -25. Now, usually, or some people will just leave it at that, but no, it can actually be simplified. How? Here, I'll show you. Now, since it's a negative number, you'd have to do negative square root of -1 times square root of 25. Now, since I equals the square root of -1, we can just put this to I. And then square root of 25 would be 5. So your answer would be I5. Now, if your answer was something like 7, square root of -7, well, you would do the same thing, -1 to -25. So you go -1, square root of -1, and square root of 7, and this turns into I. So your answer would be I square root of 7. All right, now that we understand what a complex number is, we can use it to add, subtract, multiply, and divide equations. First, let's start with adding. Let's start with a simple one like 2 plus 3i plus 4 plus 2i. Now we just add the common factors. So 2 plus 4 is 6, and 3i plus 2i equals 5i. This is your final answer, 6 plus 5i. It cannot be simplified anymore. Let's do another addition problem. Let's switch it up a little bit with some negative numbers. Let's do 3 plus 2i plus -1 minus 1i, or just I. It's just like before, you add the common factors, combine them, combine like numbers. So 3 plus -1 is 2, and 2i plus -i, or 2i minus I, is just I. So it would be 2 plus I. Just like that. Now let's move on to subtracting complex numbers. So let's put up something like 2 plus I, or 2 plus 3I, minus 4 plus 2I. We multiply, since we can make this like a -1. So negative number is, negative symbol is just basically a -1. So we would multiply 4 and 2I times -1. So this would make the equation 2 plus 3I minus 4 plus, or minus 2I. And then we just combine like numbers. So 2 and -4 is -2. And 3I and -2I is I. So it would be -2 plus I. Alright, let's do another one with some negative numbers, just like last time. So let's do, so let's do 4 plus 2I minus -3 minus 3I. Like before, we multiply -3 and -3I times -1, which we get 4 plus 2I, and negative times negative is positive, so it'd be +3 plus 3I. And combine like terms, 7, 5. 7 plus 5I, the final answer. Alright, let's move on to multiplying numbers, multiplying complex numbers. Alright, let's set up an equation. So 3i and plus 2 times 2i plus 2. No, plus 3 actually. Let's switch it up a little bit. Now, we multiply, it's just like multiplying. So, you'd want to do this times this, and then this times this. Alright, so now 3i times 2i is 6i squared. 3i times 3 is 9i. 2 times 2i is 4i. And 2 times 3 is 6. Now let's combine like terms. So 6i squared plus 9i plus 4i is 13i. It's 13i plus 6. Now, usually, you'd think you'd be done, right? Simplify it at the fullest. But no, remember, I equals square root of -1. Now, I times I, so I squared would make this just -1 because it times itself, which makes it not square root anymore. So I squared equals -1. So 6 times I squared would be, so 6 -1 plus 13i plus 6 would be -6 plus 13i plus 6, which would end up with just 13i, because the 6 and negative 6 cancel each other out to 0. So the answer would be 13i. All right, let's do this equation with some negatives. So let's do 4i plus 3i plus 3 multiplied by negative 2i minus 2. Now let's do the sequence of multiplying. So 4i times negative 2i is negative 8i squared. 4i times negative 2 is negative 8i. 3 times negative 2i is negative 6i. And 3 times negative 2 is just negative 6. And that's combined like numbers. So it would be negative 8i squared minus, so negative 8 plus negative 6 is negative 14. So negative 14i minus 6. And we're not done yet. We gotta simplify the negative 8. So it'd be negative 8, negative 1 minus 14i minus 6. Well, then we get 8, because a negative times a negative is positive, minus 14i minus 6. Then negative 6 plus 8 is 2, so the final answer will be negative 14i plus 2. This is your final answer. All right, let's move on to the final thing, just dividing. All right, so start with a simple one. 4, or no, not 4. 3 divided by 2i. All right. Now, to divide these two, we first have to multiply both sides by I. So 3 times I, or let's make it a little bigger. So 3 over 2i. So 3 times I and 2i times I will be 3i and then 2i squared. Now we simplify the 2i squared into just negative 2, because this is technically negative 1, and 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. Now this is your final answer. All right, let's do another dividing problem, but with a little harder. So let's do something like 5. So 5 plus 2i divided by 3i. Now, for this one, you do the same thing as before. Multiply both numerator and denominator by I, which will get us to 5i plus 2i squared over 3i squared. Then we simplify this, so it would be 5i plus 2 negative 1 over 3 negative 1, which equals 5i minus 2, minus 2 over negative 3. Now we're not done yet. This equals 5i over negative 3 plus negative 2 over negative 3. And negative 2 over negative 3 is just 2 over 3, since the negatives cancel each other out. So it would be 2/3 over 5i minus 3. Well, 5i divided by negative 3. But we're not done, because this is just 5i minus 3. It's just a negative 5i regular 3. So our final answer would be negative 5i over 3 2/3 minus 5/3 I. So final thing would be 2/3 minus 5/3 I. And that would be our final problem. All right.